Welcome to the Black Script Storytellers. My name is Kevin Marable. Today we have an amazing filmmaker whose work you've probably seen on the Super Bowl, ESPN, PBS, Stars, etc. The list goes on. Kevin Shaw, thank you for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the invite, Kevin.
Of course, man, of course. With everybody that we interview, we always start with a simple question, but sometimes it's often hard to answer. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Who is Kevin Shaw?
Oh man.
I told you,
Yeah,
man.
that is a hard one. Oh man, Kevin Shaw is a guy who grew up on the south side of Chicago, born and raised. The city has influenced me throughout my years.
Mhm.
Um, Loved his parents when they were alive. Mother and father imparted so much knowledge and wisdom on me, not through lectures, but just in the way that they carried themselves and in their character, about being a good person, about trying to um, leave an imprint and be good to others, and treat people how you'd want to be treated. Kevin Shaw is a person that loves movies, who loves to tell stories.
Mhm.
Uh, he's a person that loves sports. Grew up following all the great Chicago teams or not so great Chicago teams, in all the sporting disciplines of football and basketball. My film company name is 23 Films, and that'll be pretty obvious if you know where I'm from and you know that I like hoops.
Most definitely. Michael Jordan, man.
There you go. There you go.
Awesome.
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know what else I
No,
could say. I could go on and on, but I think
no,
that's I
no,
think
you're
that's
good.
a good step right there.
Yes, absolutely. You're an award-winning filmmaker. You have an Emmy. You've been Peabody nominated. You've been featured on ESPN, Stars, PBS. You filmed or you participated in filming 9 Super Bowls. Produced the film with Shaquille O'Neal, and the list goes on. I'm sure there's much more that you can mention there, but that's what I've gathered. If you don't mind, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself in the film world.
Well, I started my career working at ESPN. Coming out of school, I went to Michigan State, and I was able to study journalism. And I covered a lot of sports in college, and that kind of just flew right into my first professional job, and that was at ESPN. And that's where I really kind of learned my craft a little bit in a sense. That was kind of like a graduate school for
Mhm.
me in terms of storytelling, in terms of learning what a good shot looked like and everything like that. And I think from that experience of working there and working in television, and eventually then getting the opportunity to tell short stories, which then became longer stories, longer form pieces, and eventually documentaries and everything. I just, took every opportunity that was given to me, and I ran with it, and I had opportunities that I felt would pan one way and didn't. I think I was at ESPN for 5 years, and I wanted to really get into filmmaking and really learn that craft. And so, I left that job when a lot of
Right.
people were like, "Why would you leave?" And I left, and I pursued an opportunity. I went back to school. I went back and I went to film school, and I went to a place that a lot of people wouldn't expect to go to. I went to a film school in Nashville, Tennessee, right? I didn't go to LA or New York, whatever, frankly,
Wow.
because those schools they didn't accept me. I applied to them, but I didn't get accepted in them. And so when I said I was going to go ahead and make this move, there was this art school in Nashville, which was a right to work state at the time. I think it still is, but they had a lot of film work in that area, and so
Right.
it was one of those instances where it was a fish in a small pond type of deal, big fish in a small pond. So I was able to work there, and that opportunity led to a chance where I worked as a DGA trainee, assistant director's trainee, right out of film school, and moved back out east, out to the New York metro area. And I got an opportunity to work on some major television and film productions an assistant director trainee with the DGA, and I learned immediately that I didn't want to do that. Like, that was some hard work. I was a little bit older at the time, and I kind of did that. I don't want to call it grunt work, but kind of that beginning work per
Yes.
se
Yes.
at ESPN. And so, I'm older and I'm being asked to like go ahead and get people's lunches and maybe not being treated the same way that I felt that I should be treated just as a human being, because some of that stuff can be hierarchical, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it just didn't sit well with me. So, just kind of show me that there are experiences that you have that can be very beneficial for you, that can show you that that's not the path that you want to go to, And so that was one of them that did show me that that was not the way that I was going to break into filmmaking, working in that particular respect. You get back to the idea of treating people well and trying not to burn any bridges and have great relationships with people. The relationships that I had built at ESPN allow me to become a freelancer and work in television and really build my craft and build my business, my 23 films business from there. And out of that experiences, I ended up doing some stuff with ESPN again, and from there was able to do my first documentary,
Yes.
the street stops here, which we ended up doing for PBS, and then ended up did run on ESPN eventually. So it's just like when one door closes, another one opens. And
Absolutely.
I've just been running through each one of those opportunities throughout my career, and so that's where I've been able to do so many big things on a national level in the sporting world, and now try to do some things just in the filmmaking world here in documentary film.
Well, let's stay here for just a second. There's a few takeaways that I wanted to kind of double back and ask questions about. So
Sure.
you went to school in Tennessee. You went to a film school in Tennessee. Straight out the gate, once you were done with film school, did that help you land a job within TV and film, or how did you make your way to ESPN?
So I was at ESPN first,
Oh,
So
right, right.
yep.
Sorry.
So out of Michigan State as a documentary, excuse me, as a journalism major, I was able to get a job at ESPN. And basically, at that time frame, I was a member of the National Association of Black Journalists. They had a big job fair. They have a job fair every year as part of their national convention, and ESPN happened to be there, and I was there and did an interview with them, and there's a whole lot of kind of hoops you have to jump through. Where I got invited to another interview out in Bristol, Connecticut, and basically you had to pass a test. It was kind of like a sports trivia test, if you can believe that. But they would ask you the most obscene type of sports trivia questions, like who. What in hockey? Who is the winner of the Vezina Trophy? Who is that given to? You know
Uh,
what I mean? That kind of thing.
yeah,
And then you would need to know stuff about, well, in football last year, what did the how did the Cleveland Browns do in their
yeah,
season, and that kind of thing. So it was crazy stuff, and I actually remember studying for this test before I went out there, like I would an exam or what have you, and I was able to pass it well and be able to get the opportunity to go there. I ended up turning down another job. I had another job lined up as just like a news writer at a local television station in Detroit. And I
uh,
remember when I called the lady and told her I wasn't going to take that job, and boy, she gave me the riot act. She's like,
uh,
you've made the worst mistake of your life, And I think your words should mean something in this business. That's what she said to me.
oh man,
And so it was like it was an eye opening experience right there. Like,
that
wow, this woman
that
is
just
really smashing on me so
yeah,
hard.
that just means that she needed you. She needed you in that. She needed you in that moment.
I
Um,
guess so. I guess
yeah,
so. But that's how that it happened. I thank God I ended up taking. You think about the opportunities that we have. You take one way or the other. I was always like, I just don't want to have any regrets. So if I have the opportunity to go and chase this particular opportunity, which was like go to ESPN.
right.
Which again was like that was a temporary job at the beginning. Like the way that they hire people, they hire
It's
you
it's a
on a
foot in the
temporary
door.
basis. Yeah,
Yeah,
for like 6 months, and you have to pass kind of the muster. And if you don't pass, which some people didn't, you were stuck. You were out of a job, and you had to start all over. So you're kind of going out there with a leap of faith. But I felt
Wow.
like that was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, and I didn't want to regret.
Absolutely. And you made the right choice, by the way. I don't know what that lady was talking about.
I
um,
wonder.
um, okay, so from there, you do a bunch of things for ESPN, and then you leave ESPN and you start freelancing.
Right.
Um, in a nutshell, is there a way that you can explain how you get into freelancing for ESPN and they just pick up the work that you do?
It's really about the relationships that you built, and I think, and you look at my particular case, I feel like the people that I was kind of in concert with, that I was working with, all
Mm.
of us, we were kind of a unique class of individuals, because a lot of those people ended up becoming executives, and at other networks. And
Right.
so when they went off to the NFL network or the NBA entertainment or the Big Ten network, they needed people to do particular jobs. And so they would call me, and that's really how I kind of built my client list, was working with these folks that I had grown up with basically at ESPN. And then I had, like I mentioned, I just kept a great relationship with the people that I had worked with there in Bristol, so that when they knew that I was kind of available on a freelance basis and to do some other things within the company, I was able to get work with them and stuff. So it was really just a matter of like, you don't ever want to cross folks. You don't know who that person that you might curse out might end up being a person that could hire you for a job or
Yes.
what have you. So you got
Right.
to kind of keep, there's definitely going to be frustrations and everything like that as you walk through this journey, but you got to keep them internal, or keep them in house. You don't want to sit up there and burn bridges and everything. And I was able to maintain a fairly good relationship with everybody, and so that people would call me for when they had work, and that's how I built my client base.
That's awesome, man. You definitely don't want to burn bridges because you don't know, the people that you see on the way up, sometimes you'll see on the way down, and vice versa. Um, and you want to play nice with everybody because you never know what position they may end up in at some particular point, or the position you may end up in at certain particular points. Um, what would you say, just through that piece of experience, before we get into your documentary and things of that nature, what has been the highlight out of all of those experiences?
I
I know
mean,
there's
that's
too many to name, but if there was one that you could say, that one did it for me.
oh man, that's hard to say. I've had so many great experiences in that world. As you mentioned, I've been to so many different Super Bowls, and
Yeah.
watch people like Tom Brady win these multiple championships, and I'm right there on the sideline, and I'm filming it, and I'm able
That's
to run out on field right when the game is over, and to get shots, and
yeah.
have my family sometimes, and friends see me on TV, and things of that nature, and have my camera run into by Wes Welker and stuff. So the
Wow.
Patriots in one Super Bowl. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of great things, and I've been able to meet some great individuals. And I would say that maybe the one that stands out would be the one that you mentioned about producing a film with Shaquille O'Neal. I feel like he is a real class individual, a great guy to hang out with, and really just cool, down to earth. Sometimes, when you meet, he's not necessarily a hero of mine, but when you meet people of that stature, and your
Yeah.
heroes can disappoint you,
Right.
but he didn't disappoint. He was just a laid back dude, and
Mm.
very cool and very honest with everything. And so I think when you meet somebody like that from that world, it leaves an imprint on you, and you remember that all the time.
Yeah, I can imagine what it was like, and even to your point, I've never heard a bad story or a negative story about Shaquille O'Neal. He's always giving back. He's always doing things for the community, and he looks out for the quote unquote little guy, in a lot of instances, and there's been a lot of cases of that. Um, what was the film that you produced for him?
So with Hannah Storm, she was the director on a project. We did a film called Shaq and Dale, and basically looked at Shaquille O'Neal's. It was kind of like his origin story, going back from when he was a high school junior to his life at LSU, and how Louisiana State University, and how the coach there at the time, Dale Brown, really helped him mature into the individual that he is today. Those two have an incredible relationship, a father son like
Yeah,
relationship. So it was like really going through and investigating and interrogating and looking at that relationship again through the eyes of just those two guys. And we were able to go back and go to LSU, go on the campus, and go to specific spots throughout the campus with those two guys, and reminisce over, good times and bad and adversities that they went through. And you really just should see how much love and respect those two have for one another.
hmm yeah, that's
Yeah, and
pretty
that
awesome.
and that that piece was on ESPN, so I believe you can watch it on ESPN Plus if you have that.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't watched yet, definitely hit your DVR or on demand and see, or ESPN Plus, is see if you can find Shaq and Dale. My man Kevin Shaw produced that. That's pretty awesome, man. Let me ask you this question, and I don't know if this is a simple question, basic question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Do you consider yourself a cinematographer, director, filmmaker, or a documentarian?
I probably consider myself as a filmmaker because I think it encapsulates all of that. It encapsulates being a director, it encapsulates being a cinematographer. I'm
Mhm.
an editor too. I edit a lot of my own work. I edited my film, Let the Little Light Shine. I have another project that I'm working on right now that I'm editing. And I love doing that. I love getting in there and really working with the material and with the
Yeah,
footage and putting it together. This little puzzle pieces, moving things around and really creating it. So
yeah,
it's hard to say that. I think for me, if I say I'm just a director, or if I say I'm just a cinematographer, it doesn't shed light on those other areas that I do and the things that
right,
I've gotten paid for. So
right.
definitely want to continue to market myself in that way and let people
Yes.
know that I'm a collaborator. So not only do I direct my own things, but I go out and I work as a cinematographer for somebody else, for a director or producer, and I help bring their vision to light and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think filmmaker is the best way to describe the things that I do.
Okay, good. I was just curious because, depending on who you talk to, they may, consider themselves, one or the other, or, any of those titles. But yeah, I agree with you. Filmmaker does encapsulate everything. And the fact that you're also an editor, that's also a intricate piece to telling the story, because you can film everything, but then somebody else, you give it to somebody else to edit, and it's now in their hands to tell the story, the way they see it based upon the footage that you gave them.
Right.
Um, so to transition into your documentaries, you have a few of them. Um, you mentioned one before, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank to what you said, but I have
The street stops here.
The Street Stops Here, and
Right.
then I have America to Me,
Yep.
and Let the Little Light Shine.
Yes, sir.
Um, and you said you currently have one that you're working on, which I'm sure that's probably under wraps. You can't really talk too much about.
Right. Yeah,
So,
I kind of have two projects that I'm working on right now. I can't really talk about, but yeah,
okay,
I'm working
so
on some stuff.
we'll, hopefully we'll save that for a later date, and I'll have you back on, or in some way, shape, or form, and I can be able to highlight that for you as well. Um, but can you tell us a little bit about Let the Little Light Shine?
Yeah, so Let the Little Light Shine is a story that looks at a community in Chicago that is fighting to keep their elementary school open and from being transitioned into a high school that would benefit the neighborhood's wealthier residents. So it's a grassroots activist movement of parents, students, and educators who rally around the idea of their community, of their school being more than just a school. It's a community. It's a place where these Black and brown children have really excelled. It's one of the top ranked schools in the city. And it's a city and it's a school that most times would not be under consideration of being closed and transformed into something else. So it really starts to highlight why is this school being interrogated and deals with the issues of race and class and power and privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a story that happened over like 2018 through 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to gain some access with the community. One of my old elementary school classmates actually was one of the main parents who was fighting to save her school, and through that I was able to meet the principal and meet other community members and meet the students. And so I spent like 2 years, along with my team, to really try to dig in and tell this story of why was this school being under attack and the one targeted to be closed. And I won't tell you what happened. I hope people will
Yes,
watch it. It's a
most
film
definitely.
that
Yes.
ended up being picked up by PBS and the Strand POV. So it aired last year on POV, and right now is currently available on any VOD platform of choice. Their Apple TV, Prime Video, Google, Vudu, etc.
Right. I was going to ask you, within that process, in a roundabout way, you answered it for me, to a certain extent. But I was going to ask you, what was the deciding factor that made you take on this story?
Yeah, I think the idea of why this particular school, and I think it was very obvious for me. I just don't feel like a school that had a demographic that was white per se would have been under the same sort of scrutiny.
Right.
This is a school that was majority African American. It came from an area of working class individuals, and there were people that had stereotyped this group of students and community members and really felt that they couldn't achieve. They had the ideas that they couldn't achieve. But when the scores came in and the test scores came in, and when the district itself had ranked it as one of the top schools in the city,
Mm-hmm.
that argument really didn't carry much weight. So then you start to look at the other community members within this neighborhood who were really fighting for this change to happen, and why were they fighting for this change to happen. And so you had different classes and different races of people arguing and debating over this school, and it really dove into these issues that affect us all the time here in America when we're talking about race and class and power and privilege.
Right. Okay. And through that, you said it took you 2 years to put this together. Um, how do you choose which angle or POV you're going to tell the story from? I did take a look at some of your work, and I always find this part interesting when telling the story from a documentary standpoint is how do you know who to hone in on or who to focus on, to tell that point of view, and why tell that person's particular story.
Well, I really wanted to try to give all sides, all points of view, as much opportunity to express themselves. But I will say that my own experience of growing up as just a black person in America, growing up on the South Side of Chicago, I saw myself as one of the children that went to this school, National Teachers Academy, NTA.
Right.
And I saw myself, as somebody who, had been discriminated against in the past as well, and whose own intelligence might have been questioned just based on the color of my skin or where I grew up or how I, interacted with people. And so that, frankly, is just not right. So
Right.
in my eyes, as much as I'm trying to give, and I did give equal weight to everybody in the piece,
Mhm.
I'm probably going to ride with NTA, and I'm going to really understand where they're coming from and try to understand where these parents in this neighborhood who wanted to change the school into a high school, where they were coming from as much as possible. So we do have that voice in the film, but obviously we don't have the same sort of access, where I had access in, with the NTA community and everything, and they were happy to give that to me. It was a lot harder to get some of that access from the other community, although we did end up achieving it.
Yeah. Is that just a matter of I know I'm sure it's plenty of emails, a lot of phone calls, sometimes relationships and seeing if people can contact, certain people to see if you guys can do that. Is that how that works?
I mean, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of, unfortunately, kind of it went down and went by race a little bit. So
Mhm.
primarily the group that wanted to change the school. A lot of them were white parents, and some of them didn't want to speak with me, and so I did have to. We did have some white producers on our staff, and they were the ones that went ahead and did some of those interviews with the white parents there in this community. And it's unfortunate that I'm not the one that can sit there and do some of those interviews, or they feel like for whatever reason they didn't want to respond to me or talk to me about that. That shows you that obviously we still have a long way to go in terms of talking about race. But this is a strategy that is used a lot in documentary films. When you look at somebody as great as Henry Hampton, who did Eyes on the Prize, who had integrated teams, production teams, and how they went about getting some of the material in that great film about the civil rights movement. Sometimes that's the thing that you have to do to be able to get people to feel comfortable and feel like they can open up and feel like they're not going to be judged, I guess, or insult the person that they're talking to there.
Wow. Yeah, that is unfortunate that, still um, you know, I know it wasn't filmed in 2023, but in these days that this still happens. Whether it be race, class, um, all of that stuff, you know, it's just crazy to me. And that's part of the reason why I do a lot of what I'm doing, and I want to give exposure where I feel like it belongs and where we don't really have enough exposure because um, these stories do need to be told, and a lot more light needs to be shed in these areas.
Right.
Um, so within a documentary, it takes a very long time to compile enough content to make a documentary. How do you know where to begin?
It's kind of like the story will just kind of call to you a little bit. Like you have to have an understanding what story you want to tell. I think from number one, and from that, if you understand the points of view and the people that are best expressing that point of view, then you kind of have a launching point of how you're going to go about telling your story. I think you have to think about what kind of story you want to tell and how do you want to tell it. Do you
Mhm.
want to do it pure observational style where you're not using any interviews and you're just filming, you're going into places and spaces and you're trying to be, the camera's trying to be a fly on the wall basically and just observe and see what's happening? Do you want to create your film that way and then edit all those scenes together in a sense so that when the audience watches it they just feel like they are there, and they can make their own decisions as to how they interpret what's going on in a particular scene. I love that kind of filmmaking. Sometimes though you do need to have some interviews to maybe provide some context as to what's
Right,
happening within the scene and stuff. And so that's definitely what we ended up doing in Let the Little Light Shine.
right.
So you can do that. Some movies, which could be a straight archival, historical type of project, will lean heavily on interviews, you know, and so then you're thinking about, well, I need to get X, Y, and Z. I need the right people, the right experts, the right people who are involved in whatever the story is that I'm telling. I have to get them and film them, and how do I film them? What is the look and the style, and where am I filming them? So those are a whole nother set of questions that you have to ask yourself, you know, and where's the archival material that I have to tell this story? Where can I find it? Do I need to hire somebody to help me find these archival pieces, these pieces that nobody has ever seen before? Like those just don't come out of nowhere. You know, there are
Right.
usually people that are digging to find those things. And so they have great resources and sources on their own where they can look for stuff, and they call people too, right? If you're finding stuff that's never been found before, you're usually calling somebody who might have some material that's been hanging in their garage for a while, you know, film that's just been hanging out there. So then you got to get that film transferred, and then you find these gold mines, you know, these needles in a haystack and stuff. So there's different approaches. So you have to sit there and think about what's the approach that's going to be best for the film that I'm trying to tell. And once you understand that, that's how you can go about creating your documentary.
Right. And also to that point, it gets me to thinking like what exactly makes a documentary interesting. Like how do you know you have an interesting story? And then also to what you said, when you're digging for archive pieces, and you're looking for moments that might have been hidden, or just lost in somebody's garage, and you stumble across it. Once you receive that footage and you look over it, how do you know that what you have is gold?
Yeah. I think to answer the first part of the question, I think when you're looking at what makes a great documentary, it's going to be a documentary that poses some questions that might not have answers to them,
Mhm.
you know, and part of the documentary is this journey to find out what these answers might be. And you might not come up with the number one answer to whatever the question is that you're posing, but it's going to leave you with something that you can ponder on and think about for a while, and continue that conversation in your community, in your home, whatever
Mhm.
that might be. I think that's one thing right there that makes a great documentary. Documentary usually has to have some sort of conflict involved, you
Right.
know, or it has to have some sort of journey that goes on with a character or a set of people that are trying to achieve some sort of goal. And it's very much like any narrative film, you know. Narrative films have that, where you have this the hero's journey,
Yes.
somebody that's trying to achieve a goal. I think the same thing applies to a lot of great documentaries. You see that as well. So those are other things that make a great documentary. And then I think in terms of archival, just like just those pieces that you have never seen before. If you're doing a piece about, you know, Little Richard or Muhammad Ali. I mean,
Oh,
we've
yeah.
seen so much Muhammad Ali, right? Like we probably know what the iconic moments are from
Right.
his career, and we've seen them. But if you saw something that you truly had never seen before from his upbringing in Louisville, it was something like a meeting between him and Malcolm X, you know, like and it was on camera, on film, or what have you, because a lot
Mhm.
of that has been documented. But you have something that's on film. I mean, that would be amazing right there, right? And so you would know immediately, like, okay, I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
seen this before. So
Especially,
this is going
yeah,
to be a needle in the haystack that people are going to love. You know what I
right.
mean?
Especially if you have footage from an icon, like
Yeah,
Little Richard, or Muhammad Ali, or Michael Jackson, or things of that
right.
nature. You automatically know somebody's going to want to see this, and somebody's going to want to pay to see this.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. You'll know immediately. There's no doubt about that.
Yes. A lot of I see that a lot of your work deals with sports and education. Um, is that by design?
You know, I think so. Those were two strong areas of interest for me. Obviously, I told you about my love of sports growing up and everything. So, and that opportunity with working at where I worked at ESPN and some of the other sports networks, I always wanted to tell sports stories. I wanted to tell human interest stories that just happen to be in the world of sports, because I
Mhm.
think that was a way to bridge the gap for people too, who might not like golf or might not like baseball or whatever. But if I can tell a human interest story in one of those sports, then that person can get connected to it. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that was something that when I achieved that, a lot of times, I really really appreciated that, and I thought that just showed the power of storytelling and everything. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And in terms of education, um, I don't know how I got hooked on to that particular theme. I think there's always been a little bit of me that has looked at the role of education in our lives, and recognizing how important that is, and recognizing how great educational opportunities have sometimes been starved from our community, from the Black community and everything.
Yes.
Not just to say from the Black community, but from a lot of other communities here in across America,
Right.
and that disconnect and how that's so unfair sometimes. But even with that imbalance, you have had success stories, and you've had people that have been able to achieve and fight against those adversities or whatever. So I think trying to explore that world has always been an interest of mine. And so when I had opportunity to first do it with the America to Me, and do it with Steve James, and look at a community that was like well resourced in Oak Park, Illinois, which is a suburb right outside of Chicago. They have a great high school that's high achieving, well resourced,
Mhm.
but has this achievement gap that's off the chart. The Black, brown students are not achieving at the same level as the white students, and why is that? And so when that was brought to me as an opportunity to be part of that filmmaking team, and to spend a year there, right? Like, we're not just going to spend 2 weeks or something like that and do a couple of interviews. It's like spend a year with a bunch of people in that community, with families, with students, with teachers, and really try to dissect what was going on there. That really opened my eyes into, again, the power of storytelling, to be able to really dive into a meaty issue and give it the weight that it deserved, and have people resonate with it and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. That leads to another question, based off of what you just said, is spending a year documenting. Um, I can't imagine how much footage you walk away with. How do you know you've reached the finish line?
I think with both of those, if you look at American to Me, which is a year project, and
Yeah.
and certainly Let the Little Light Shine, which was like a year and a half project. They both kind of had end dates. The
Uh,
American to Me, it was a full year, and so we were going to end on the graduation date. We didn't follow just all seniors, but it was going to be some of the seniors, so that kind of had our end date right there. With Let the Little Light Shine, I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, but when this situation resolved itself, that was going to be the end of the
the
film, and it
ending.
was just going to be how did it resolve itself. So I guess I was kind of lucky in that regard, in knowing that I have end dates here. I know when it's going to end. It's just a matter of it happening, and me being ready to document it well.
Right. Because when you watch some documentaries, not all, but when you watch some documentaries, and it gets to the end, um, a lot of times it'll cut to black, and then it'll have the text letting you know what has happened. And then in some cases, they might still be fighting, and so the documentary is more to provide more exposure or shed more light on a particular incident that has happened, and
Right,
maybe somebody hasn't gotten justice for something, and they're still fighting to they're still seeking justice, and so
right,
in those cases, I can see how you can walk away with a multitude of footage and still not have maybe the conclusion you might have been hoping for during that time span of filming, but you still come to a conclusion or some sort of resolve to where you can end that piece.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that someone told me was that if you're out there filming and you're trying to figure out when when your project might be ending. If you find yourself repeating yourself and filming the same kind of scenes over and over again, that might be a good clue as to, you know, I think we might have it already, and
Right.
maybe we have to do some work in the edit now and really shape what our ending is going to be and what we want to leave the audience with. But that was always a good rule of thumb for me. Like if you find yourself repeating yourself out there in the field and you're filming the same kind of scene over and over again, you might have it already in the can.
And as far as television goes, is there said formula for, maybe, I don't know if you have like a 30-minute segment and a 60-minute segment, or if you're even doing like, a series, is there like a guideline that you have to follow, whether it's, just a 30-minute, 60-minute, or per episode, that type of thing? Is that something that you might have information on?
I don't really do a like act structure when I'm putting out and structuring my films. They are things that are more organic for me, where I'm just looking at all the footage. I'm really trying to identify what are the scenes that are going to be in my film and really taking that first stab at what a scene might look like. So I'll identify all the scenes that I have. I'll probably go and edit the first scene that I'm most excited about, edit
Mhm.
that one first, and then just kind of work my way through everything. And then once I have all the scenes together, I'll start to figure out their structure and where they fit in the story and everything.
Okay.
And the you working that way, the film and the story will kind of tell you what length it feels like it needs to be.
Yeah.
One of the projects that I'm currently working on, it was initially set up to be potentially a shorter film, but through the editing and through all the work that we've done on it, we feel like right now it's a longer film, and then
Mhm.
it might be an hour long instead of the 20 or 30 minutes that it should that it was contracted to be. So now you just have to convince the executives that you know
You
you
need more
have the
time.
same you need more time and all that. But that's kind of like a good problem to have, right? I'd rather have more material
Right.
and trying to figure out what to do with it rather than not having enough and having to stretch something out.
Yeah.
That would be the worst. And then I would know that I probably didn't do a great job out in the field getting everything that I needed.
Yeah. What's a common challenge that you might encounter often when filming documentaries? Is there
Common
some?
challenge, probably access. Building the trust with the people that are working that you're trying to film, the film participants. I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing in making a documentary. You want to have great relationships with the people that you're trying to document. I think that's a big thing that's being discussed now in documentary film. That power imbalance that does exist between the director and the person and the community that you're trying to tell a story about. A lot of the power rests with us, rests with the filmmakers, right? We're the
Right.
ones that are telling the story, that are making specific editorial choices, and
Right.
they're powerful and they last forever. And
Yeah.
so you really
Because
have to make sure.
you can bend the story either way. How you perceive things, opposed to how that maybe the community might see it differently.
Right. And so really try to not do that. So I really want to work in concert with the community or with the film participants to make sure that, I'm giving an accurate portrayal of the things that I documented, that they're, feeling good about what's out there. And they might disagree with certain things or what have you.
Right.
I'm not giving them a final cut on what's being presented and stuff, but I do believe that we need to have those conversations, and that agency there needs to be presented to the people that are participating in the film so that they feel like, this is a worthwhile experience. This is something that I feel good about, that is accurate representation of my point of view, or the things that I, as a person experience. So that's probably the most difficult thing in terms of working in documentary today.
Okay. And that leads me to another question. I didn't have this one written, but it made me think. Um, when it comes to when you're documenting in the with the people on the ground, the people that are there within the community, uh, I would assume that you would have to get their permission. Everybody that's on camera, um,
Mhm.
and then, but when it comes to maybe creating a documentary about someone, or that might be more so biography opposed to documentary. Um, I don't know if that's still in the same class or not, but um, just like when you're writing a book about somebody,
Yeah,
you have kind of free agency to write a book about somebody, not necessarily without or kind of without their permission.
right.
Um, how does that work in the documentary space, or is that not a thing?
Well, you usually have to get permission to do that. If you're going to like tell a story about, a celebrity, or even just say, let's just say an artist, or anything like that. You're trying to work in concert with that person
Mm,
to be able to tell their story accurately. So yeah, you're looking to get permission from them. You're usually signing, some sort of release
right,
with them, and depending on what's agreed upon, you're giving them some sort of agency in the telling of their story. And I feel like the more agency you give them, but not to the point of where they're changing things in the piece, or they don't want to go down a particular road because it's a difficult time. They don't want to discuss it. Those kind of things. They're very tricky, and you see that a lot in some of these biopics that are out right now, where people, you might have done a big piece on some sports person, or musician or artist, but we all know that they have this life in the tabloids, and it might be very interesting, but that's not covered at all in the documentary, because
right.
those folks
They don't
said
want
we're
to-
not going to do that.
Yeah,
So
they don't
that kind of thing, I don't want to get myself into that type of position. So I wouldn't agree to that. Like, I want to
yeah,
be able to, if I want to talk about these things, and these are things that people might want to hear about, then we should figure out a way to try to cover that in the piece and stuff. So those are things that are negotiated, and so some of those negotiations will go well, and some of them won't. And so you just have to kind of live with what you get in that regard. Know what you're getting into if you have that opportunity to do those kind of projects.
okay. And so, outside of your commission work, do you have any pet projects or anything that maybe you would love to work on at some point when given the free time?
I don't have any specific pet projects right now. I think Let the Little Light Shine was a pet project of mine. That was something that I totally, generated on my own at first, and then built a team around me, and was able to get funding through public media, and that kind of work is very exhaustive. I mean, it takes a lot out of you. That
Yeah,
was like a 5-6 year journey, basically, and so to try to do that again and again and again is not something I really want to do. I want to try to get a few more kind of work for hires and commission work for a while. I do feel like for me, the story is so important, and I really want to find something that hasn't been done before, or hasn't been, or an angle that hasn't been discussed just yet. And so that search for that kind of unique project is exhausting for me. It takes a lot,
right.
and I kind of won't settle until I really find that thing that's really going to move the meter for me. So what is that? What is that thing right now? I don't know. I'm sure. Hey, LeBron James is going to be retiring at some point. I'm sure everybody would love to get the last year of LeBron James's
Oh, most
career,
yeah,
and document that kind of thing. But he's got his own company to do that. But if there was any pet project that I think I would dive into and love to be a part of,
it would be
but
that.
again, as somebody as strong a personality as he, you might not be able to go certain places, and that would be something that you'd have to think about as a documentarian. If there are areas that you want to discuss, are you able to do that with that kind of personality, because it will affect the type of project that you end up doing.
Yeah. Um, got two more things for you. Two more things.
Sure.
Um, as far as creating a documentary, that requires a certain level of commitment, consistency, research, and having a certain level of fact, that goes along with that to be able to tell the story accurately. And for the average viewer, when we're watching a documentary, let's say it's an hour or hour and a half, we're just looking at something that in our eyes and in our mind, it's only an hour and a half, but we don't really take into consideration how much work and how much diligence goes into that, and then also how much teamwork goes into that. To your point, that you've stated several times, um, and the amount of time that you spend on the ground, capturing these moments and getting all of this footage. Um, can you speak to the level of discipline that you have to want to do documentaries?
Yeah, I think for for one, no one is going to love the project or want the project more than you. So if you, as the creator of the project, are waffling one day or don't feel like filming one day, or whatever hesitations you might have, that could be the deal breaker. That could be the thing that just ends it. There were many days where I had to get up and do the thing, man. Go out there and film,
Yeah,
with Let the Little Light Shine, regardless of whether I wanted to or not. And I lived quite a ways away from NTA, which is down on the South Loop of Chicago downtown, and I live about 45 minutes away from there. So I had to drive every day to do those things. And when something happened, if there was a rally going on and whatever, I had to make the concessions in my schedule to go ahead and do it, because I knew that this was the only time this thing was happening. Like, you don't want to sit back there and say, "Oh, I was tired, I didn't film this thing," and then it's like a major moment in your piece that you could have
missed it.
had. So, and you missed it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you are the number one motivator as that person. And then, yeah, you have to build a team around you. You have to build a great team of whether that be a producers or cinematographers, editors, executive producers, people who can be a mentor to you, people who are going to give you great feedback that you truly trust and enjoy, and know that they're just not gassing you up saying, "Oh, it's great," but it's really not, or they'll tell you things that you think are great and say, "You know what? It's not as good as you think. You're missing this and that." And you have to be able to listen to that and be able to take it and not take it personally. So you need those kind of people in your corner to really help you achieve your goals and stuff. And you talked about, yeah, as a viewer, you're watching this 1 hour or 90-minute documentary that somebody spent 5 years of their life doing. You
yeah,
watch these documentaries, all of them, that are whether they're be on Netflix or on PBS. People have put years of their life into this thing,
yeah.
so they're not just sitting out there and spending 2 weeks on the project. They've put a great amount of their time into this, and there are a number of people that have really researched and worked just as hard on these projects. So there's
Hmm.
a ton of time investment in this thing. And so those are a lot of the things you have to consider when you're thinking about trying to do your own documentary or pursuing some sort of story. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not like you can't do it, but you got to be really sacrificed. You got to be really disciplined, that is, to achieve that goal.
Yeah, that's a whole nother level of dedication, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No doubt about it. No doubt. But the
It,
rewards at the end of the day, right? The rewards at the end of the day pay off, right? With like my community there at NTA, for one, I've developed such a great relationship with all those folks down there at NTA, right? So like they're part of my family now, and we'll have that forever. Our
Mhm.
film was out in 2022 or whatever, it's 2023. And, 5 years from now, we will still have, all those experiences of not only making a film, but then being out there and showcasing it and taking it to different areas of the country and being part of that
Yeah.
celebration, being part of that community, being part of that impact. And those are things that, no one can take away from us. So it's those moments there. That's what really makes it all worthwhile. A lot of work, but the reward is so much greater.
Yeah, I would agree, man, and I commend you all for the level of hard work and dedication that you put into everything that you do, and to bring us these real, authentic stories, things that are happening in our communities that otherwise would go unnoticed or unspoken of, or not documented, or maybe a 30-second blurb on the news in that local region. These are things that we need to see and hear and know more about, so that way change can begin to take place. So we need more people, in particular more Black, brown, underrepresented people like yourself, um, to step into these roles and actually document and actually you know, become these types of filmmakers that tell these stories and, put themselves on the line to expose it. And yeah, so I commend you, man. I'm glad that you were willing to come on and talk to me, provide us with a wealth of knowledge in your background. I truly appreciate that. A lot of what we do on this platform is a means of giving back and providing the information that we otherwise wouldn't know, and wouldn't know where to begin or what to do in order to get into the field that you're in. So I want to provide that exposure on our end, and also give you spotlight and your flowers for some of the things that you do, because there's a lot of people in the industry that we have no clue of, that look like you and I, and they will have an entire career and will go unnoticed.
Right.
And I want that to change. And so part of my mission is to help provide that spotlight, search for people who you know uh, are willing and are deserving. Also, I mean, everybody that that's doing taking on a role is deserving, but um, that are willing to give back and not gatekeep the information, and provide it to the next person, so when it's their turn they can do the same, and pass it down as well. So Kevin Shaw, I thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate your time, your knowledge. um, I would love to have you back on at some point to talk about your future projects. And uh, yeah, uh, Kevin Shaw, everybody.
I appreciate you, Kev. Thanks, man. It was great talking to you.